I assumed the call was a system error until the branch manager whispered that my husband was sitting across from him with a woman who was me. I raced there and saw my own face through the glass, but the cold smile did not belong to me. I realized then that if they failed to steal the $18 million today, they would steal my life tomorrow. My name is Kendall Reeves. I was 36 years old and sitting in my home office reviewing grant applications for the foundation my mother built when my life fractured into two distinct pieces. The clock on my desk read 2:41 in the afternoon. The phone rang. It was the private line. Mrs. Reeves. The voice was tight. I recognized it as the branch manager of Harrison and Vale Credit Union. Yes. Is everything all right with the account? I cannot explain this over the phone, he said. His breathing was audible. Your husband is here. He is attempting to access the trust. Evan is authorized for withdrawals under $5,000. I said, confused. He is not making a withdrawal. The manager said, he is trying to liquidate the entire portfolio. And Mrs. Reeves, he is not alone. He is sitting here with a woman who looks... She looks just like you, to the point where it is terrifying. I dropped the pen. I drove to Briarstone, Maryland, with my foot pressing the gas pedal to the floor. The trees blurred into a green tunnel. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I screeched into the parking lot of the credit union and saw it immediately. Evan's silver sedan was parked right at the front entrance. Wes Dalton was waiting for me by the employee entrance in the alleyway. He looked pale. He grabbed my arm and pulled me inside before anyone in the lobby could see me. We moved them to the private conference room, Wes whispered as we navigated the back corridors. They passed the ID check. They passed the signature verification. But your mother... She installed that final layer. Voice recognition plus a specific memory phrase. That was where they stalled. We stopped in front of a one-way mirror. Look, Wes said. I looked. My breath hitched in my throat. Evan was sitting at the mahogany table. His posture was rigid. Across from him sat a woman. She had my chestnut hair. She wore my favorite navy blazer. She even tilted her head to the left when she listened, exactly the way I did. Oh my God, I whispered. Then the woman turned her head. For a second, I thought I was looking in a mirror. The structure of her cheekbones, the shape of her nose, the lipstick shade, it was all mine. But then I saw the eyes. My eyes are green. Hers were a cold, predatory amber. Wes signaled the security guard. The door to the conference room opened. I stepped in. Evan looked up. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. He scrambled out of his chair, knocking it backward. Kendall. Wait. It's not, Evan stammered, his hands shaking. I can explain, please. The woman did not stand up. She did not panic. She simply turned that terrifyingly familiar face toward me and smiled. It was a smile devoid of any warmth. Police officers swarmed into the room behind me. Don't move, an officer shouted. Evan fell back against the wall. This is a misunderstanding. She's just an actress. It was a joke. The woman laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. She looked at the police, then at me, and finally at Evan with pure contempt. Save it, Evan, she said. Her voice was an eerie mimicry of my own, though slightly lower in pitch. The gig is up. She looked me dead in the eye. My name is Lena Voss, she said calmly, as if we were meeting for coffee. Your husband hired me 6 months ago. He paid for the hair, the clothes, and the voice coaching. The goal was to walk out of here today with $18 million. I stared at her. I stared at the ring on her finger. It was a replica of my wedding band. 6 months, I asked. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. 6 months of study, Lena said. He wanted you replaced. Literally. I looked at Evan. He was weeping now, a pathetic, broken sound. I'm sorry. Kendall, I'm in debt. I didn't mean to. I felt a coldness settle over me that was heavier than anger. I did not cry. I did not scream. I watched the police cuff my husband and the woman who wore my face. This was not infidelity. This was not a midlife crisis. As I watched them drag Evan out the door, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He did not just want to cheat on me. He had built a campaign to erase me. The police officer placed a heavy clipboard in front of me on the mahogany conference table. My hand trembled as I signed my name at the bottom of the witness statement, but my eyes kept drifting to the evidence bag sitting next to the pen. Inside was the driver's license Lena Voss had used. I picked up the bag. It was terrifying. The hologram, the weight of the plastic, the lamination, it was flawless. This was not a cheap forgery bought in a back alley. This was professional grade work designed to pass high-level security scans. Wes Dalton sat across from me, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "I have to be honest with you, Kendall," Wes said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If your mother had not insisted on that secondary protocol, if she hadn't demanded the specific memory phrase about the summer house, I would have authorized the transfer. The paperwork was perfect. I am so sorry." I looked out the window where the patrol cars were flashing their lights. I watched them shove Evan into the back of a cruiser. He was slumped over, defeated. A strange sensation washed over me. I waited for the tears. I waited for the heartbreak of seeing my husband of 4 years arrested, but the tears did not come. Instead, my mind began to click into place like a series of tumblers in a lock. The last 6 months suddenly made terrible, crystal clear sense. I remembered the sudden increase in his business trips to Philadelphia. I remembered how he started placing his phone face down on the dinner table every single night. I remembered the way he would casually ask about the trust fund distribution dates, masking his greed with feigned concern for my stress levels. "You should really change the beneficiary to me, Ken," he had said 3 months ago over wine. "Just, for safety, in case something happens to you. It creates a legal mess otherwise." When I had refused, saying my mother wanted the foundation to remain independent, his face had darkened. He had not spoken to me for 2 days. I had thought he was just hurt. Now I knew he was calculating. A detective approached me before I left the bank. "Mrs. Reeves," he said, "I need you to listen to me. The quality of those forgeries suggests resources. This was not a 2-person job. This looks like organized crime. We are sending a patrol car to check your perimeter, but my advice is to change your locks, change your passwords, and do not stay in that house alone tonight." I nodded, but I did not go to a hotel. I drove straight back to the house I shared with a stranger. The silence in the hallway was suffocating. I walked past the kitchen and stood before the oak door of Evan's home office. He had always kept this room locked. He told me it was because of client confidentiality clauses in his contracts. He had forbidden me from ever stepping foot inside. I kicked the door open. The lock splintered with a satisfying crack. I tore the room apart. I pulled books off the shelves and swept papers off the desk. Then I found it. Taped to the underside of the bottom drawer was a small black burner phone and a spiral notebook. I opened the notebook. My blood ran cold. It was not client notes. It was a surveillance log. There were dates, times, and locations. Tuesday, 2 in the afternoon. Dalton goes to lunch at O'Malley's. Best window for entry. Thursday, Kendall goes to yoga. 3 hours clear. He had been stalking us. He had been studying the bank manager's schedule to find the perfect moment of weakness. My hands shook as I picked up the burner phone. It had 1% battery left. I pressed the button to wake the screen. There was one unread message from an unsaved number, received 10 minutes before the bank manager called me. I read the text, and the room seemed to tilt on its axis. If bank plan fails, switch to plan B. Accident. Quick and clean. I dropped the phone on the carpet. I backed away until my back hit the wall. I had assumed Evan was just a greedy husband who wanted my money. I had assumed he wanted to divorce me and leave me broke. I was wrong. The realization hit me so hard, I gasped for air. They did not just want the $18 million. They needed me gone to enjoy it. They had a script ready to erase me from the world. I dialed the number for the local precinct with fingers that felt like ice. Detective Alana Pierce answered on the second ring, before I handed over the burner phone. However, I did something my mother taught me about insurance. I pulled an old digital camera from the top shelf of the closet, one that had no Wi-Fi capabilities and no cloud connection. I snapped high-resolution photos of every text message, every log entry, and the serial number of the device. When Detective Pierce arrived at the house 20 minutes later, I handed her the phone in a sealed plastic bag. "There is a text about a secondary plan," I said, my voice steady. "They called it Plan B. They mentioned an accident." Pierce looked at me with a grim expression. "We will run a full extraction, Mrs. Reeves, but until we know who sent this, you are in danger." 2 hours later, I was sitting in the lobby of a hotel downtown, but I was not alone. Wes Dalton had sent his personal recommendation for legal counsel. Miles Carver, a senior partner at Carver and Slate, sat opposite me. He did not look like a man who handled simple fraud cases. He looked like a shark in a three-piece suit. "You need to understand the gravity of this." "Kendall," Miles said, leaning forward, "this is not just attempted grand larceny. Attempting to access a trust of $18 million using a body double is conspiracy. But that text message that elevates this to conspiracy to commit murder. I want to know who they are," I said. "Evan is not smart enough to organize this. He can barely organize his golf schedule." "I agree," Miles said. "That is why I brought her." He gestured to the woman standing by the window. She turned around. Juno Hart was small, wiry, and had eyes that seemed to dismantle everything they looked at. She was a former federal agent who had gone private because, as rumor had it, she liked to move faster than the law allowed. "Your husband is a prop," Juno said bluntly. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. The woman, Lena Voss. "She is a prop too. Imposters don't self-teach. To mimic a subject that perfectly takes training, it takes a paper team to forge those documents, and it takes a handler to call the shots." A shiver ran down my spine. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "You disappear," Juno said. "You check into this hotel under your maiden name. You pay cash. You stop your morning run. You change your coffee shop. You become someone else, just like they tried to become you." I followed her instructions. I went back to the house one last time to pack a single suitcase, escorted by 2 of Juno's security contractors. While I was shoving clothes into a bag, I knocked over a stack of magazines on Evan's nightstand. An envelope slid out. It had fallen between the pages of a golf digest. I opened it. It was a receipt from an electronics store in Baltimore, dated 9 days ago. It was for a miniature magnetic GPS tracker. My stomach turned over. I ran downstairs and out to the driveway. "Check the car." I ordered the security lead. "Check the undercarriage." One of Juno's technicians slid under my SUV with a flashlight. He was down there for less than 30 seconds before he slid back out, holding a small black box the size of a matchbook. It was inside the rear wheel. "Well," he said, "magnetized. Live signal." I stared at the device. Evan had been tracking me. He wanted to know exactly where I was so he could coordinate the bank visit, or worse, coordinate the accident. Juno's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and then at me. "We traced the number that texted Evan," she said. "It routes back to a credit counseling service in an office park off the interstate. I sent a contact to check it out. And it's empty," Juno said. "No furniture. No computers. Just a shell company leased with stolen identities. The lease started 6 months ago." I looked at the tracker in the technician's hand, and then at the empty driveway where Evan used to park. The picture was forming, and it was monstrous. Evan was just a single link in a chain. He had sold me out to a machine, a network that created ghosts and stole lives. "They are not just thieves," I whispered. "No," Juno said. taking the tracker and crushing it under her boot heel. They are hunters. And we just kicked their nest. The dossier Juno Hart threw onto the hotel bed landed with a heavy thud. It was thick, filled with mugshots and redacted police reports. Lena Voss is a ghost, Juno said, pacing the small room. The name is fake. The social security number she gave the bank belongs to a woman who died in 1998, but we ran her prints. She has been arrested in 3 different states for fraud and forgery. She is a chameleon, Kendall, and she has been watching you for a lot longer than we thought. Juno tapped her tablet and spun it around for me to see. It was a map of my neighborhood. A red dot was blinking directly across the street from the gym where I trained 4 mornings a week. She rented a studio apartment in that building 5 months ago, Juno said, with a direct line of sight to the treadmills. I felt a wave of nausea. I remembered seeing a woman reading on a balcony sometimes when I was stretching. I had never looked closely. I had never thought to look. And watch this, Juno said. She pressed play on a video file. It was security footage from the coffee shop I visited every Tuesday. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago. A woman walked up to the counter. From the back, it was me. The hair, the coat, the posture. Can I get a soy latte? Extra foam. 2 pumps of vanilla, the woman on the screen asked. I covered my mouth. It was not just the order. It was the inflection. The way she pitched her voice up on the word vanilla. It was my voice. They didn't just want to look like you to pass a security check, I whispered, staring at the screen. They wanted to become me. They wanted to take my place in the world. My phone rang. It was Miles Carver. Kendall. I have found something in Evan's financial records, Miles said. His voice was grim. It appears he purchased a life insurance policy on you 7 months ago. The payout is $1.8 million. The premiums were paid in cash through a broker who lost his license a decade ago. It is a black market policy. I sat down on the edge of the bed. He bet on me dying, I said. He didn't just bet on it, Miles said. He was financing it. Juno took the phone from me. She spoke to Miles for a moment, then hung up. She looked at me with a seriousness that frightened me more than the video. Police analysis came back on the text message about Plan B. Juno said, the phrase accident, quick and clean, matches the modus operandi of a series of unsolved, fatal car crashes in the Northeast. Brake line tampering. It is a signature. That night, sleep was impossible. The hotel room felt like a cage. At 2 a.m, the room phone rang. Not my cell phone. The hotel landline. I looked at Juno. She nodded, signaling me to answer while she traced it. I picked up the receiver. Hello. For a long moment, there was only the sound of heavy breathing. Then, a voice that sounded like gravel grinding together spoke. Don't think you won because the bank was careful. The line went dead. Juno was already moving. She ripped the cord out of the wall. Pack your bag, she ordered. They know we are here. That call was not just a threat. It was a location ping. We are moving you to a federal safe house. This is bigger than local police now. We moved in the dark. As I sat in the back of Juno's armored SUV, watching the city lights blur past, the fear that had paralyzed me for 12 hours began to change. It hardened. It cooled. It turned into something sharp and dangerous. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. They had studied me. They had mimicked me. They had planned to kill me and replace me with a copy. Juno, I said. Yeah, stop driving in circles, I said. If they are hunting me, I am done running. I want to set a trap. The safe house was a gray, windowless bunker that smelled of stale coffee and ozone. Special Agent Noah Ricks of the Financial Crimes Unit did not waste time with small talk. He tossed a file onto the metal table between us. We have been chasing a ghost named Carter Briggs for 2 years, Agent Ricks said. He leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. He is not just a scammer. He is an architect. He designs these scenarios, finds the weak points in wealthy families, and inserts his players. Your husband was just an employee. Juno projected a timeline onto the wall. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a date 7 months before I met Evan. Evan was drowning. He had $600,000 in gambling debts. He was facing kneecapping or prison. Then, on October the 12th, the debt vanished. 0 balance. "Someone paid it off," I said, looking at the numbers. "Someone bought him." Juno corrected. "They bought his life, his loyalty, and his future. He didn't fall in love with you, Kendall. He was assigned to you." Agent Ricks opened the laptop they had seized from Evan's office. He clicked on a folder labeled Profile. "Read this," Ricks said. I leaned in. It was a document listing the criteria for an ideal target. The words were clinical and cold. Subject must be recently bereaved. Subject must control a trust or foundation. Subject must have a public schedule accessible via social media or charity events. Subject must be emotionally vulnerable. I felt sick. They had not just chosen me for the money. They had chosen me because my mother had just died, and my work with the foundation put my itinerary on the internet. My grief was not a tragedy to them. It was an entry point. We also traced the insurance payments, Ricks said. They used a technique called smurfing. Thousands of transfers under $10,000 from shell companies into the broker's account. That is how they paid the premiums on your life insurance without triggering federal alerts. The door opened. A woman walked in, looking nervous and exhausted. She introduced herself as Marissa DeWitt. She had lost $2.5 million 3 years ago to a man who had drained her accounts using forged authorization forms. Juno placed a mugshot of Evan on the table. "Marissa, is this the man Juno asked?" Marissa stared at the photo. Her hands began to shake violently. That is him," she stammered. "But that isn't Evan." "What name did he use?" I asked softly. "Mark," Marissa whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "He was Mark. He was my business partner. I saw him at the office every day until the accounts were emptied." Juno tapped her keyboard rapidly. "We just got the cross-reference back from the database," she said. "Evan Klein is just an alias. He has operated under at least 3 different names. He has 2 prior marriages on record in the Midwest. The first wife lost her inheritance. The second wife died in a hiking accident 6 weeks after the wedding. The room went silent. I looked at the photo of the man I had slept beside for years, the man I had vacationed with, the man I had nursed through the flu. It was all a performance. Every kiss, every argument, every moment of intimacy was billable hours for a predator. "My marriage was a contract," I said. The realization did not break me. It calcified me. "We have enough to put Evan away for a long time," Ricks said, "but Briggs is the one we want. He is the head of the snake." I stood up. I looked at the board filled with evidence, at the terrifying profile document, and at Marissa's tear-stained face. "You want Briggs," I said, "and I want my life back. Evan thinks I am the victim here. He thinks I am the grieving widow who got lucky with a smart bank manager." I turned to Miles Carver, my lawyer. "Draft the civil suits," I said, "and call the press contacts. We are not just going to prosecute them. We are going to expose the entire method. If they used my public image to hunt me, I am going to use that same image to burn them down." I sat at the steel table in the safe house, looking at the dossier Agent Ricks had spread out. My hands were folded calmly in front of me. The fear that had consumed me 24 hours ago was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, calculating clarity. "I will do it," I said. "I will testify. I will face Evan in court. But I have one condition." Agent Ricks looked up from his notes, "which is, I do not just want Evan and Lena." I said, "They are disposable. I want the man who trained them. I want Carter Briggs." Ricks nodded slowly. "That is the goal, Mrs. Reeves. But to catch Briggs, we need to force his hand. He is cautious. He never touches the money directly. We need to make him believe the $18 million is moving again. A bait I said. Exactly, Rix replied. We set up a dummy transfer. We authorize a movement of funds from your trust to a secured trap account. We make it look like Evan's initial attempt actually worked, just delayed by protocol. When the money hits the trap account, someone has to log in to sweep it to the offshore shells. That is when we trace the IP. That is when we get Briggs. Miles Carver was already typing furiously on his laptop in the corner. While the FBI handles the trap, I am filing emergency injunctions, Miles said without looking up. I am getting a judge to freeze every asset connected to Evans' aliases. We are hitting them with civil suits for fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy. By the time criminal court is done with them, I want them to be destitute. Later that afternoon, Juno took me aside for what she called psychological armor training. You are going to have to look at Evan again, Juno said, and he is going to try to manipulate you. He will cry. He will use your pet names. He will try to trigger your empathy. I don't have any empathy left. I said, Good. Juno said, but you need to be disciplined. When you face a manipulator, the instinct is to argue, to scream, to correct their lies. Do not do that. She leaned in close, her eyes intense. Don't argue, she said. Let them speak. Silence is your weapon. Every time they open their mouths to fill the silence, they give us evidence. Let them talk. Every sentence is a noose. That evening, I insisted on reviewing the Foundation's old correspondence logs. I was looking for patterns, anything that I had missed during the fog of my grief. I accessed the archived server and started digging through my mother's email account. I found it in the spam folder. It was an email sent to our family attorney, dated 2 weeks before my mother died. The subject line was simply, "Concerns regarding E." My heart hammered as I opened it. I do not trust him. My mother had written, "He asks too many questions about the estate structure. I think he is recording our conversations. Please review the prenuptial agreement again." I stared at the screen. My mother had known. She had tried to warn us. But the email had never reached the lawyer. It had been flagged as spam and buried. Juno, I called out. Juno came over and looked at the screen. She ran a diagnostic on the email header. That wasn't an algorithm error, she said darkly. Someone manually set the spam filter to catch emails with specific keywords like lawyer or estate. Who managed your mother's IT? A contractor, I said, my voice shaking. A man named Greg. The Foundation used him for years. Juno typed the name into her database. Greg is listed as a consultant for a holding company in Delaware, she said. The same holding company that pays the rent on Briggs's shell offices. I closed my eyes. The pieces fell into place with a sickening finality. My mother's death was officially recorded as a sudden decline from a chronic heart condition. But now I wondered if they had access to her communications, if they were monitoring her suspicions. Did they accelerate her decline? Did they pressure her? This was not just theft. This was a long con that might have cost my mother her life. I opened a fresh notebook. I picked up a pen. I began to write. I detailed every date, every suspicious comment Evan had made, every missed meeting, every lie. I was not writing a diary. I was drawing a map of their crime. They used the Foundation's publicity to find me. I said to the empty room, they used my reputation to study me. I looked at the Foundation logo on the letterhead. Fine, I whispered. If they want a show, I will give them one. But I write the ending. The bait was set at 9 in the morning. Agent Rix authorized the dummy transfer of $18 million into the trap account we had created. We stood around the monitors in the safe house, watching the digital lines of code wait for a predator. It took less than 11 minutes. We have a hit, a technician shouted. Incoming connection. Someone is trying to reroute the funds to a Cayman Islands shell. It is not Evan. The keystroke analysis is too fast. This is a pro. Trace it, Rix ordered. The IP address led to a short-term rental office in downtown Baltimore. FBI tactical teams breached the door 14 minutes later. I listened to the radio chatter, my heart pounding against my ribs. Premises are clear. The voice on the radio crackled. Computers are wiped. They used an electromagnetic pulse to fry the hard drives. But we found something. A sticky note left on the monitor. Rix looked at me. Read it. He commanded. It says, Briarstone, Dalton. The room spun. Wes Dalton. The man who had pulled me into the back room. The man who had stopped Evan. Bring him in, Rix said, his voice cold. An hour later, Wes Dalton sat in the interrogation room. He was not wearing his suit jacket. He looked small and terrified. I stood behind the one-way glass, feeling a fresh wave of betrayal. He saved me. I whispered to Juno. Why would he save me if he was part of it? Maybe he wanted a bigger cut. Juno said. Rix walked into the room and threw the photo of the note on the table. Talk, Wes. Wes buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. I didn't know they were going to kill her, Wes sobbed. I swear. They found out about an error I made in 1995, a small embezzlement I paid back. But they had the records. They said they would ruin me. Who, Rix asked? Briggs. Wes said. He told me to approve the transfer when the husband came in, but when I saw Mrs. Reeves, when I saw the wife, I couldn't do it. I knew if the money moved, she became a liability. So I called her. I decided to betray the blackmailer instead of her. I leaned my forehead against the glass. He was not a villain. He was just another pawn who had snapped his strings. Briggs knows you flipped, Rix said. That is why he left the note. He is burning his bridges. We moved Wes to protective custody, but the atmosphere had shifted. The enemy was reacting. That afternoon, Juno drove me to a temporary workspace to sign some affidavits. We were in an armored SUV. Halfway there, Juno's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Hold on, she said. She swerved sharply across 3 lanes of traffic. A black sedan behind us mirrored the move perfectly. We are being followed, Juno said. She did not sound panicked. She sounded angry. She took a hard right, running a red light, and the sedan peeled away, disappearing into traffic. When we arrived at the secure garage, Juno walked over to the decoy car that had been parked in my spot, an identical SUV to the one we were driving. She slid underneath it. She came out holding a severed cable. Brake line, she said, wiping grease from her cheek. Clean cut. If you had taken this car, you would have hit the retaining wall at 60 miles an hour. I stared at the severed tube. The text message about Plan B was not a threat. It was a work order. They do not need Evan anymore, I said. The realization made my knees weak. If they can't get the money by fraud, they will kill me to trigger the inheritance clauses for the next of kin. They have a cleaner, Agent Rix said, stepping out of the shadows of the garage. We intercepted an encrypted message an hour ago. They are calling in a specialist known as the mechanic. We don't have a face. We just know that when he shows up, people die in accidents. I looked at the black grease on Juno's hands. I looked at the grim face of the federal agent. They were trying to protect me, but we were purely reactive. We were waiting for the next attack. I am done hiding in bunkers. I said, Kendall, you are a target. Rix warned. Exactly, I said. I am the target, and the mechanic needs to get close to me to do his job. I walked over to the calendar on the wall of the garage office. I circled the date for the upcoming Foundation Gala. 2 days away. We are going to the gala. I said, I will be on stage. I will be in the open. If Briggs wants me dead, he will have to send his man to do it there. That is suicide, Juno said. No, I said, turning to face them. It is a hunting blind. We turn the gala into a trap. I will be the bait, and when the mechanic comes for me, we take him, and we make him give us Briggs. The Alden Civic Hall was a masterpiece of illusion. To the 300 guests sipping champagne under the crystal chandeliers, it was just another black-tie gala for the Reeves Foundation. But to me, As I adjusted the diamond clasp of my necklace, it was a fortress. Every waiter was a federal agent. Every flower arrangement concealed a camera. And I was not the hostess. I was the bait. Stand by, Kendall. Juno's voice crackled in my hidden earpiece. We have eyes on the south entrance. Stay in the light. I stepped onto the stage. The applause washed over me. I smiled, waving to faces I had known my whole life, knowing that any one of them could be working for Carter Briggs. I began my speech, my voice steady, thanking the community for their support. Then I saw her. Standing in the shadows of the stage left wing was a woman. She was wearing a duplicate of my emerald green gown. Her hair was styled in my signature chignon. My heart stopped. It was not Lena Voss. Lena was in custody. This was a different woman. A second copy. A third Kendall. Juno, I whispered, barely moving my lips. There is another one. Stage left. Before Juno could reply, a loud pop echoed through the hall like a gunshot. The stage lights exploded in a shower of sparks. The main hall plunged into darkness. Fire, someone screamed. The crowd surged. I saw the panic ripple through the room. People rushed toward the main exits, but the doors did not open. They were jammed. The mass of bodies began to compress toward the stage. A terrified stampede building in seconds. This was the accident. They were not going to shoot me. They were going to crush me in a panic they had engineered. I did not run. I grabbed the microphone stand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I shouted, my voice booming over the emergency speakers which were on a separate circuit. "Please look to the East Wing. Our platinum donor, Mr. Jonathan Hayes, has just opened the VIP lounge for safety. Move to the right. To the right." There was no Jonathan Hayes. There was no VIP lounge. But the lie worked. The herd mentality shifted. The crushing weight of the crowd flowed away from the jammed doors and toward the open east corridor, dispersing the deadly bottleneck. In the chaos, I saw Juno tackle a man dressed as a sound technician near the breaker box. He struggled violently. As Juno pinned his arms, he threw his head back and swallowed something small and metallic. He swallowed the drive. Juno yelled into her comms, "Get a medic! An hour later!" The hall was empty. The police had cleared the building. I sat in a makeshift interrogation room set up in the manager's office. The door opened and 2 agents brought in Lena Voss. She was handcuffed and wearing a prison jumpsuit, but her face was pale with a terror that looked genuine. "I heard about the second girl," Lena said. Her voice trembled. "If she is here, that means Briggs is scrubbing the operation. He is tying up loose ends." I looked at the woman who had stolen my face. "Why do you care?" I asked. "Because I am a loose end," Lena whispered. She leaned forward, her eyes wide. I don't want to die. Kendall, I saw what happened to the girl before me. I will tell you who Briggs is. I will give you the location. But you have to promise me federal protection. Not just prison. Protection. Deep witness protection." I stared at her. She was not afraid of spending 20 years in a cell. She was afraid of the man she worked for. "You give us Briggs," I said coldly. "And you get to live." Lena nodded, tears streaming down her face. Just then, the door opened. Agent Ricks walked in. He did not look triumphant. He looked furious. He signaled for me to step outside. "We have a problem," Ricks said, keeping his voice low. "Did the technician talk?" I asked. "The technician is in surgery," Ricks said. "But that is not it. We just intercepted an outgoing transmission from a device inside our own command van. Someone on the team just broadcast our position." My blood ran cold. "A leak. A mole," Ricks corrected. "Briggs knows we are coming. We had a 48-hour window to catch him before he vanishes. That window just closed. If we don't move tonight, he is gone forever." I sat in the witness box before the grand jury. my hands clasped on the polished wood railing. The room was silent as I recounted the anatomy of the crime. I spoke about the phone call from the bank manager at 2:41 in the afternoon. I detailed the burner phone taped under the drawer, the $1.8 million life insurance policy purchased in secret, and the GPS tracker welded to the frame of my car. They did not just plan to rob me, I told the jurors, looking them in the eyes. They planned to stage a fatal accident to liquidate my estate. When I stepped down, Miles Carver met me in the hallway. He was holding a heavy, leather-bound binder. "Lena Voss delivered," Miles said grimly. "This is the playbook. It is a training manual on how to become a target. It covers everything. Vocal inflection, walking gait, dietary habits, even how to mimic a grieving spouse." He flipped to the back of the binder. "There is a list. Kendall, prospective targets for the next fiscal quarter." I looked at the names. My breath caught in my throat. Third on the list was Julian Thorne. Julian was not just a stranger. He was the treasurer of my foundation. He was the man who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding because my father had passed away years ago. "Julian," I whispered. He is family. "He is a mole," Miles said. "He has been feeding Briggs your schedule for 2 years. I did not break down. The time for tears was over. Call a board meeting." I said, "Tonight." We gathered in the Foundation's boardroom at 8 o'clock. Julian sat at the head of the table, smiling his grandfatherly smile. I placed the black binder on the table in front of him. I opened it to the page with his code name. "We know. Julian." I said. Julian did not panic. He looked at his phone, typed a quick message, and then looked up at me with eyes that were suddenly devoid of any affection. "You should have just signed the papers." "Kendall," he said softly. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian, sent while he was sitting right in front of me. "Briggs says don't think you are a hero. FBI." Nobody move. Agent Ricks and his team burst through the doors. Julian was tackled before he could erase his phone. But the message he had sent acted as a digital beacon. The FBI cyber team traced the handshake signal back to a warehouse in the industrial district, 10 miles away. We rode in the command van to the location. When the agents breached the warehouse, what we found made the air leave my lungs. It was not a warehouse. It was a studio. There were sets built to look like bank lobbies and lawyers' offices. There were rows of wigs, racks of designer clothes, and walls covered in surveillance photos of dozens of wealthy women. It was a factory designed to mass-produce imposters. I walked to the far wall. Pinned to a corkboard was a faded photograph of my mother, taken 3 years ago. There were red circles around her jewelry and notes in the margins about her heart medication schedule. "She knew," I said, touching the photo. "She figured it out. That is why she died." They didn't wait for nature. They pushed her. Agent Ricks approached me. "We have Evan," he said. "He just cut a deal. He gave us the location where Briggs goes to scrub his identity at the end of every month. He changes his name, his face, everything. We have the address?" "Good," I said. "There is one condition," Ricks said, looking uncomfortable. "Evan insisted on speaking to you. He says he has things to explain. He says he still loves you." I felt a surge of cold rage. I looked at Ricks. "Tell him no," I said. It might ensure his cooperation. Ricks argued gently. "He cooperated because he is a coward who doesn't want to die in prison." I said. "He lost the right to speak to me the moment he put a tracker on my car. Tell him he does not exist to me anymore. Not as a husband, not even as a memory." I walked out of the warehouse into the night air. The final piece of the puzzle was in place. We knew where Briggs was. The game of cat and mouse was over. Now, we were just going for the kill. We baited the hook with a public press release. I stood in front of the news cameras and announced that the Foundation was initiating an immediate transfer of $20 million for a new hospital wing. It was the largest single grant in our history, and I knew it was the signal Briggs had been waiting for. He did not arrive in a getaway car. Carter Briggs walked into the Harrison and Vale Credit Union through the VIP entrance. He was a distinguished man in a bespoke gray suit, looking every inch the high-level financial consultant. He walked with the confidence of a man who knew the game was rigged in his favor because he had helped write the rules. I watched on the security monitor from the manager's office. "He used to be your mother's junior asset manager?" Agent Ricks said, his voice tight. 20 years ago. That is how he knew the internal structure of the trust. He didn't just hack the system. He helped build it. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. He had looked my mother in the eye, shaken her hand, and then spent decades perfecting a way to loot her legacy. In the conference room, Briggs was sitting next to the second imposter. She was a perfect visual replica of me, down to the scarf I had worn in my press conference. Briggs was playing the role of her legal guardian, smoothing the paperwork over with a terrifying efficiency. "Now," Ricks said. I did not run. I walked down the hallway and pushed open the heavy oak doors. Briggs looked up. He did not flinch. He smiled, a polite, condescending smile that made my skin crawl. "Mrs. Reeves," Briggs said smoothly. "I believe there has been a confusion. My client is already here." The imposter looked at me with dead eyes. I did not scream. I did not argue. I looked directly at the camera in the corner of the room and spoke the words that Wes Dalton had told me were the keys to the kingdom. "The blue hydrangeas bloom late at the summer house," I said clearly. The room erupted in sound. Red lights flashed as the bank's silent alarm triggered a complete systemic lockdown. The biometric system recognized my voice and the phrase, overriding the imposter's authorization. "That creates a hard freeze," I said, looking at Briggs. Nothing moves in or out. The doors burst open. Agent Ricks and the tactical team swarmed the room. Briggs stayed seated. He adjusted his cufflinks, looking bored. "You think arresting me is a victory?" Briggs sneered. "I have lawyers who cost more than this bank is worth. I will be out on bail in 3 hours. And by then, my offshore accounts will have moved the capital beyond your reach." I stepped closer to him. "You are assuming you have money to pay them," I said. Briggs frowned. "I signed a court order 12 hours ago," I said. "Based on the evidence Lena gave us, a federal judge froze every shell company, every offshore trust, and every hidden asset connected to your aliases. You are not a billionaire anymore. Carter, you are broke. You can't buy silence, and you certainly can't buy freedom." For the first time, the color drained from his face. The door to the lobby crashed open. A man in a maintenance uniform lunged toward the chaos. The mechanic! But he never made it to the room. Juno Hart stepped out from behind a pillar and leveled him with a taser. As he fell, a team of agents secured him, pulling the very brake-tampering tools he had planned to use on me from his belt. The trial was a spectacle, but the moment that stayed with me happened when Evan took the stand. He looked small, pale, and defeated. If the transfer had gone through, the prosecutor asked, what was the plan for his wife? Evan looked at me. His eyes were wet, but I felt nothing. Briggs was clear, Evan whispered into the microphone. Money or no money? Kendall had to go. If we got the cash, she died to cover the tracks. If we failed, she died to trigger the life insurance. There was never a version of the plan where she survived. The gavel came down 2 weeks later. Carter Briggs was found guilty of conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder. The multi-state raid that followed dismantled his factory of lies and rescued 3 other women who were being groomed to replace victims like me. I walked out of the courthouse and stood on the steps of the bank where this nightmare had begun. The sun was shining. The air felt different. It tasted clean. I looked at the spot where I had seen my own reflection in a stranger's face. They learned to become me, I said softly, to the air, to the memory of my mother, and to anyone listening. But I learned to destroy them with the truth. I turned my back on the bank and walked toward my car. I did not check the rearview mirror. I did not look for a shadow. I was finally truly, the only Kendall Reeves. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please let me know in the comments section where you are tuning in from so we can connect and share our thoughts together. And please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel. Like the video and support us by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.